All right, so it's 14:10. I think we can probably get started now. People can just join as they please.
Yep.
Right, so
cool, that sounds good.
Awesome. So everybody, welcome to this panel discussion hosted by Motto. Unfortunately, Marieka of Motto is unable to attend right now because she's busy moving, but luckily the session is being recorded. Oh yeah, actually, I should probably inform you guys that it's being recorded. Because we would like to share this on our social media. So I hope everyone's comfortable with that. And happy International Day for Persons with Disabilities, guys. It's nice to have all of you here that are here. With just a few technical things, please, when other people are speaking, it would be good if everybody could remain muted and unmute when you speak. We're going to have the panel discussion, and then hopefully, time allowing, we'll have some Q&A at the end. If anyone has questions, they are welcome to post them in the chat box, and Nicole, who is being our technical manager here, will copy them over, and we'll try to answer some of them if we can, if we have time. But if not, we will, if you could please just put your email address with your question, then we will answer all the questions via email afterwards and go through them. All right, so facilitating our panel discussion today is Brandon Beack. So I'm going to just introduce him quickly before he takes over for me. So Brandon co-founded the Walking with Brandon Foundation with his parents after he became a quadriplegic in 2012 as a result of a gymnastics accident. Walking with Brandon basically offers advanced outpatient rehabilitation to South Africans with physical disabilities at an affordable rate. And Brandon believes that access to rehabilitation should be a right, or is a right, and not a privilege. He's a para-athlete and he's competed internationally in many competitions and is currently training for the 2024 Paris Paralympics. He is currently completing his studies at Stellenbosch University, and he is a well-known public speaker. Thank you, Brandon.
Thanks a lot. I really appreciate the introduction. So yeah, I guess I'll be just directing the discussion for today. But I mean, everyone knows my background pretty much. So I'm going to let each person introduce themselves. So each person gets an opportunity to speak before we start chatting. So let's start off with Life. Life, can you please introduce yourself? A very inspirational woman from a very humble background. And yeah, so tell us a bit about yourself, Life.
Hi, everyone. My name is Life. Ngubane. My real name is Nokupila, but it means the same thing. It means have life. So life is easy. So yeah, I am from Richards Bay and KZN, and I'm a pharmacist assistant. I work at Medipost Pharmacy. I know some of the people will be watching and joining because marketing decided to send a very big email about today and right now. So yeah, I'm a celebrity today. So yeah, so I work as an assistant here at Medipost, and yeah, I've worked, I think, my way up until now. So there's still more to do, but yeah, that is me in a nutshell. Yeah.
Something that's also inspiring about Life is coming from a previously disadvantaged background. She is able to work herself up to where she is right now, going against the odds of her community. And we'll tap into that a little bit later and hear her experiences of going against what people thought were the true capabilities of those with disabilities. So the next person I'd like to introduce is Madri. Well-studied occupational therapist with her doctorate, and I would love to for you to introduce yourself.
Thank you, Brandon. Yes, hi, I'm Madri Engelbrecht. I'm an occupational therapist. I've been practicing for a little bit more than 20 years, which is a long time. My field of practice is disability and employment. And then before I started to specialize in that field, I did most of my clinical work with persons with mental health issues. But at the moment also work with persons with disabilities across the complete spectrum of disabilities. And we assist employers and employees to fully integrate persons with disabilities into employment, into businesses, and support both the employee with a disability and the employer towards a long-term sustainable employment relationship. That's me.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Madri. The next person we'd like to introduce is Lilley. I know you introduced yourself briefly earlier, but I want to hear more about what's your background and what experience you have.
Okay, hi guys, I'm Lilley. I work for Motto. My background and experience is essentially I have been passionate about disability activism for quite a long time. I was the chairperson of a student society advocating for the rights of students with disabilities on Stellenbosch University campus. And I have postgraduate qualifications in political science and psychology, and both of my dissertations had a disability focus. I also currently run the Disability Perception Tool page for Motto, which is the Disability Perception Tool is essentially a survey tool that assists organizations in their diversity and inclusivity efforts with regards to disability. I will be starting an MPhil, hopefully, in 2022, and I will be focusing on perceptions of disability within organizations and the lived experiences of disabled people. I'm also currently in the process of writing a book, which I'm calling so inspirational in an eye-rolly kind of way, Tales of Ordinary Lives. So yeah, that's pretty much me. Oh, and also I have a guide dog called Tesky, and she's very cute.
I love the name of that book, by the way, Lilley. That sounds amazing.
Thank you.
I'm feeling so underqualified here. I mean, everyone else here has got these high positions and qualifications, and I have I push my wheelchair really fast as a full-time career, I guess, as a sprinter. But hey, each to their own. Next one to outshine me is Tayla Ross. I know she's a biokineticist. She's partnered with the Walking with Brandon Foundation, but she could tell a bit more about herself. Introduce yourself, please.
Okay, hello, I'm Tayla. I am a biokineticist. I work at the Walking with Brandon Foundation, and I'm also that wonderful man's girlfriend. So I guess I'm coming at this from two different perspectives. One would be from a more clinical or healthcare professional perspective, and one is as a partner. But I'm currently completing my master's in biokinetics, and I'm set to start my PhD in spinal cord injury rehabilitation research in January 22. So I'm looking forward to that. And yeah, just really grateful to be here.
Awesome, thanks, Tayla. And last but not least is Thato. Please introduce yourself as a stroke survivor and extremely well-read and inspirational woman.
Hi, everybody. My name is Thato Minyuku. I'm a member and I'm also a director for Stroke Survivors Foundation. We do a lot of work to assist stroke survivors, not only emotionally, but to align them to therapists when they need them. I'm also a stroke activist, working primarily to ensure that there's awareness and education for society, as well as nationally within South Africa. I'm also a mother, and I've got a beautiful family, and there's other things that I do on the other side of my life. I claim to be a businesswoman, but there's businesses that have a habit of failing. So maybe I just need to follow my vocation as a stroke activist.
Thank you so much, Thato. So, I mean, we have quite a large panel here of 6 people, and generally it's around about 4, but I think it's quite a diverse panel. medical professionals, people involved with law and psychology, and I don't know where athlete falls in there, but hey. And I feel like we're going to get a lot of different perspectives here, as obviously the theme of the discussion is disabilities from different perspectives. So let's open it up, and I'm going to start the first discussion here. And the first question I'd love to ask Life. Life, from your experience, how has your community's views posted limitations to you in terms of their perceptions of what persons with disabilities can do? So how did they limit you, and how did you overcome that?
Like I said, when I introduced myself, I am from Richards Bay, but it's in the rural parts of Richards Bay. So disability is, I don't know if I should say it's not normal, but because we do exist. There are people with disabilities, but you hardly ever see them because I don't know, people just don't, we exist, but we're not living. And then what I've seen is when, if you're there are no schools in Richards Bay. So number one, then you have to search for schools in other places, say in Durban or in Maritzburg or somewhere there. So if your parents do not know how to get there, but I think things are getting better, but we don't have access to a lot of things. When a person is thinking that, okay, this person is disabled, they're thinking, okay, let's teach them how to sew. Let's teach them sewing. Let's teach them how to do pottery, anything to do with hands. But they don't think that we can be able to be educated. We can become lawyers. We can become things that we can go to school. Let's start there. And so it's, for most people, I feel like they see us, but they don't know exactly what to do with us. I'm not sure. I have a story to tell, because it's not only the people around, it's transportation as well. It's like how people view a person with disability and what disability is to them. I use public transports, and a guy that was driving, so when I come to work, you pass a hospital. He gets out. When we reach the hospital, he does not ask if anybody's getting out. He takes out my wheelchair. And then I look at him thinking, what? And then he says, are you not getting off? I'm like thinking, no. Why? Just because I'm disabled, I'm supposed to go to a hospital. It's not a sickness. I'm not sick. I'm well. So I waited for him, and he opened the wheelchair, and I'm like, what's going on? So, and then it makes you think, you're in 2020 something, and somebody is thinking you sick. I'm not sure if that's what they think. So, but what I've myself, I've always said to myself, I'm not going to become a statistic. My parents had no idea what it means to have a spinal bifida. They had no idea what to do with a child that is disabled. They had no idea. A doctor suggested they need to take me to school. They said, okay, yeah, take it to school. And then when I saw myself in school, then I knew, okay, next step, get to high school. Then from high school, get a job, because I just didn't want to be a statistic, because where I come from, it's going to be okay if I sit at home and get a grant. That is allowed. It's a norm for them. But I just didn't want to be that, because when you go out, and I was outside KZN, and then you see other people, then you know you can become more than what they think you can be. So I think it starts within yourself as a person with a disability, that you know that you're not limited, even though society, like taxi drivers, they still pass you, but you know you will get a smart person who's going to give you a transportation. You are going to get where you're supposed to go. But it starts with you. You can't sit at home and be like, oh, wow, this happened. So what else can I do? So it starts with a person, like you can do more. There's more that you can do. You are a person, you are an entire human being. And so there must be a reason why you are alive. Just that you probably just can't walk or whatever the disability is, but it doesn't limit you as a person. But I feel like it starts with a person with a disability. That's, I think I've answered you well.
No, definitely. I totally agree with that. I mean, I feel that often society looks at, they harp so much on what you're not capable of, rather than looking at what you are capable of, even if it might be slightly less. So they see, oh, you can't walk, oh, you can't do lift heavy things or do lots of manual labor, but yet you have function of your hands, or you have function of your mind even. Someone who can't even use their hands, someone could get the correct software and operate a computer normally, and they can do work the same as anyone else on a computer. There's always capabilities, and the one's community definitely tends to limit them. I see it on a daily basis. Lots of clients that come into our Therapy and Beyond Center, they come in and they feel like they can't really do much. So to go from that starting point and have to show them what they truly are capable of, it's a slow process. So like you said, it has to actually come from the person like yourself, Life. It has to come from, it has to be your decision. Do you feel like there was a turning point or a moment that was like a defining moment that made you feel like, okay, I actually can't be stuck here, I need to move on?
I think I will say liberty is when I know that I can do things for myself without having to ask the next person. And I realized especially when I'm home, everybody, as nice as it is that everybody is willing to help, but I would like to do things myself. But I'm limited because you'll find that I can't reach certain things. I'm limited because I can't really just get it into a taxi by myself. But then I feel like you kind of like think, if I feel like this when I'm here, probably I shouldn't be here. So that is why maybe I feel like that is why I moved. And then I got into a space whereby I know that I can be myself and I can do things for myself and by myself. And I think that's for me was what drives me, that I can do this. I'm okay. So the people around me can just get on with it. I think that was my turning point.
And just lastly, I just want to ask, do you see other people with disabilities around you and who have, in a sense, lost hope or feel like they can't do much? And do you ever go to them and try and open their eyes? Do you ever see them and think, you're truly capable of much more?
I've had situations whereby people see me and then I think you need to speak to so and so's parents because you went to school. How? Because so and so is at home. So I do speak to people. I will encourage you and tell you, oh, yours is even lesser. There's people with worse disabilities than you, and you're just sitting. For why? And I speak a lot. Even if I meet you today, and I feel like you're not supposed to be like, just because you have a speech problem, you're thinking you can't do one. I can't walk. I mean, it could be worse. So like, you cannot be sitting at home and like thinking, no, I can't. What, you can't what? What have you tried? What happened? So like, if they are, there's platforms. I feel like we need more platforms like this. Like, I don't know what's wrong with people. As long as your brain works, you're fine. You can do anything.
As long as your brain works and as long as we still have humor, we can get through anything, eh?
Anything.
Oh gosh. So yeah, it's crazy to see how the people around us play such a big role in allowing us to move forward or actually limiting us from moving forward, us being those with disabilities. And this also plays a big role in us taking that step forward to finding a direction in life, and it could be in a career, or if it's employment or sport or whatever it may be, even starting up a family. But I know Madri wanted to bring up some interesting points with her employment opportunities background. It's from that perspective, Madri, how do you find, I'm sure you could even ask Life a thing or two there from her experiences, but what has been your experiences with people with disabilities and generating opportunities for employment?
Okay, thanks, Brandon. Yeah, I do want to revert back to Life, but before I do that, I wanted to just put my eggs in as well. So just for people who might not know, in South Africa, we accept the estimated statistic that 15% of the population in South Africa are people with disabilities. But from an employment perspective, we've always had less than 2% of employed people in South Africa are persons with disabilities. So there's a huge discrepancy there if you look at the demographics. And we've really struggled as a country, and I think failed as a country, to actually increase our employment statistics for persons with disabilities. And we've failed and struggled with that since 1994, when we became a democratic country, and since and beyond that, 1998, when the Employment Equity Act came about. We've not taken many strides to change that. From my experience in the world of disability and employment, the barriers that I've come across and are still coming across where disability and employment are concerned is a lack of knowledge and exposure to the concept of disability, but also to persons with disabilities, preconceived ideas about disability and what someone with a disability can do, which again relates to negative or disabling attitudes towards persons with disabilities, stigma around disability, and then on a very practical level, lack of access to transport, to information, to technology. So there are many, many more barriers, but I want to ask Life, as someone who has finished school and moved into employment, how that happened for her. And I specifically, I know you've been successful, you are successful, but I'm interested to know about those barriers, because if we don't know them, we can't tackle them. So are you happy to tell us about that?
Of course, yes. What I find, finding employment, I wouldn't say, it might be that there are difficulties getting in, but for me, there were recruitment companies that were focusing strictly on people with disabilities, which was great. But now you get a job and then they don't know what to do with you. They got the idea, because government pushes that a certain percentage needs to work at a certain company. So they will employ you, but they don't know what to do with you. And you find there's no accessibility at all. I know when I started here, there's so much is like, okay, Life, what can we do? At least they asked. Oh, I was very vocal. Not everybody is that vocal. I'm very vocal. If you're on a ramp, I'm there. I'm like asking security, how did this happen on your presence? So I'm very vocal about it. But other people are not as vocal as I am. Like I don't know when to which battles to fight at times, or should I live this? But nothing changes if we don't talk and say this is wrong, or this is what I need as a person with a disability. There were no ramps. the toilets, things like that. It might be simple for a person who's walking, but for me, it's a situation that I work in point A, but I have to go via point B to get to where I'm supposed to go because they don't know I need certain things. So you can get in employment because they push to, but they don't know when you're in, they don't know what to do with you. Because I know I had a friend, she passed away because she went and got a degree. She was fine. She was employed in a big company, but because they didn't put where she's supposed to be, she tried to speak. Not everybody is brave to say, put me, I have a degree in this, I'm qualified on this, but please, they put it there. She pushed paper. She was depressed. We don't know what happened to her. She was only found after 3 days because she was so depressed that she went to school, got this degree, but she's not working where she's supposed to be. So I think that's the biggest problem, that we do get employment, but they don't know what to do with us. As long as we're there, they pay us. It doesn't matter what happens after.
May I make a comment, please?
Gladly.
Thanks. Okay, so I also had an experience where, it took me ages to find a job. And then at some point when I finally did, I was told from the get-go that, okay, we're going to give you a job, but you're not going to be able to have any upwards mobility. I was a customer service agent. I don't know why I wouldn't be able to have upwards mobility, probably because I wouldn't, I don't know, I didn't work as fast as the other agents, but I don't see why that should prevent someone from becoming a manager. But that's also something that with disability and employment is often people will employ disabled people for the purposes of ticking boxes, and they will push them into some kind of entry-level position and keep them there forever, regardless of the promise that those people show. Incidentally, that job I ended up leaving because the colleague with whom I used to get lifts every day moved away from Stellenbosch. I live in Stellenbosch, by the way. Moved away from Stellenbosch to Cape Town, and this job was in Cape Town. And they refused to let me work from home because they said that they didn't want to treat me differently to the other employees. Yet when there were taxi strikes, the other employees were allowed to work from home.
Oh, that's crazy.
Yeah,
Madri,
I have thousands of comments on this, but
go ahead.
No. I don't think I should though. I think if we can do a webinar on only employment at some point, that would be amazing, because there's so much to unpack about what Lilley and Life has just shared. So yeah, so I just want to say those stories are extremely familiar to me, and in the area where I work, we do battle every single day around those issues, and it's still very much a reality, and it shouldn't have been at this point anymore, but it is.
Madri, can I also make a comment?
Yes.
So I actually recently had to mark papers for personal trainers, and they do a module on, it's called special needs, which already I hate that term. I hate the term special needs. But they were asked questions on the importance of the Employment Equity Act and why people should employ, or why businesses should be employing people with disabilities. And there was such a clear lack of understanding on their behalf. And I know that they're not business owners, but there's just such a clear lack of understanding just in the general population on the importance of employing people with disabilities. And I've got one answer here where it says that a company should aim to accommodate employees with a disability so that they don't feel like their disability makes them useless. I mean, that is just unbelievable to me. So I think there's just such a clear lack of understanding, and I think that's why webinars and panel discussions like this are so important, to actually make people aware of just how important it is, and that individuals with a disability, there's absolutely no reason that they shouldn't be allowed to work and they shouldn't be able to move up through a company.
Just on that point, This will be my last point, and then I'll keep quiet. People without disabilities should be employed for exactly the same reason, I guess, so they don't feel useless.
That's a great answer.
Yeah, that is a great answer. I think what makes it even more challenging sometimes is when you can't see the disability. So in life, there's so many visual disabilities, but there's also the invisible ones that we don't often see immediately when you meet a person. So I would like to start a discussion between Thato and Lilley, and I'll throw it over actually to Thato. Experience, you give a bit of your experience living with a.
Yes, invisible disability is often known as hidden disability. And from my understanding of it, it's basically a disability that is immediately visibly and not understood. So it's not apparent, it's not obviously apparent. And this one goes directly on myself because I am one of those with an invisible disability. The main one is actually aphasia. If I can say a short story, I was with a person with a stroke about 2012, and the mini stroke in 2011. And the biggest challenge was basically aphasia. At that time, almost 8-9 years ago, it was called global aphasia, which basically means all my level of communication to express it and to receive it was basically near zero. So I looked just fine. I was able to, do what normal people do, but my ability to communicate to anybody else and for them to communicate with me was near zero. And this is one of the difficulties that society has in terms of their understanding of what invisible disability is. And when I say societal understanding, I'm not talking about the medical model. I'm not talking about the human rights model. I'm talking about the partial understanding and negativity of people with disability and people with invisible disability. It just, if I can put it,
sorry. No, continue.
Did you want to add?
Yes, but I didn't want to interrupt you. So sorry, just finish.
Okay, no problem. I was going to say a list of invisible disabilities, but I'm not going to go through the depths of it. There's so many, by the way, and all of this is part of disability itself. I'll give you a list, such as autism, even asthma, chronic fatigue, chronic neuropathic pain, sleep disorders, depression, diabetes, epilepsy, migraines. I'm basically talking about any kind of condition or disease or condition that does not show physical. What you can see, it's not shown. It's all inside of the mental side. It's all inside of how the person communicates, inside of the emotional side as well. It's
sorry.
It sounds. I hear you want to say.
Oh, I just wanted to add to that actually it's interesting because I had a friend who had such trouble actually getting hold of resources when she was at university. She would ask for accommodations such as to have the material from the slides that were going to be in her lecture sent to her before, because she has a visual impairment, but she's not she's not completely blind, but she couldn't see the slides in class. So she asked for access to the slides so that she could read them, and they refused to give it to her because they didn't believe her that she was disabled. And similarly, I mean, that's just one example, but I think another thing that actually happened to a blind friend of mine. Now, the thing is, with some blind people, you can see they're blind, with some blind people, you can't. But he was literally approached by a guy in a bar once and like sort of tapped and like, hey, what's wrong with you? Are you drunk? Kind of thing. And it's really interesting how like when people can't see that you're disabled, how people refuse to believe that you're disabled unless, I mean, it's shoved in their faces.
I mean, the drunk one I've received so many times, because on one of my worst days when aphasia hits me hard, I literally look like I'm slurring. So I literally sound like I'm drunk, and it's difficult to communicate with people who automatically have the perception that this lady had something to drink, but that is not so. On the personal side as well, I literally had to, how can I say it? I literally had to redo my relationship with close people, with my relatives in my life, because their understanding about aphasia and a stroke as well is that they believe that something was not only damaged. They would call me words like stupid. They would say half brain. They would say she's too funny. And it's fascinating how the process works, how the journey worked, because literally I noted everything and I took time to journal it, because at that time I was unable to communicate what I needed to say. So I noted everything. Second, months later, I would speak to them individually and say, okay, this is what you said to me months ago. It held hard, and this is what I need to say to you. Just because I've got aphasia, it does not damage my intelligence. So even though I can't say it, I will say it when I can. I'm asking for you to be patient and allow me to speak at my time when I'm ready to speak to you with a little bit of respect. And it took me months to be able to express it, which is difficult for a person with aphasia. And time is, I appreciate time because that's how the journey works. And if I understand it, that's kind of how people with disability work as well. We gotta get society to understand us and understand that we are part of the natural part of humanity. We are part of human beings itself. I can stop from there.
Yeah, that was very powerful. I really respect how you manage that, Thato. It's having that patience to actually work through it and then reflect to those other individuals on that condition, actually letting them understand. Because I feel like when it comes to disabilities, months later,
laughing at it now.
But the fact is you did it. Most people, and I mean, I'm guilty for it. I might get offended, or I see someone, maybe something small, parking in a wheelchair bay or whatever, and I'll just shrug it off. Or someone might say something that's offensive to me, and I'll just shrug it off and just say, they won't understand. But the fact is, you've got to teach them, even if it is weeks down the line or months down the line. The fact is, you're still bringing it up, and that helps them grow. And that you hope that little moment will help the next person. And just sharing that empathy, that sense of understanding to each other. Because dealing with a disability, a physical disability or a noticeable disability is one thing. When you're dealing with an invisible disability, it's something different. And it can be very offensive how people react around you. Mm. So I really appreciate how you handled that. Well done, Thato.
It is. I think one of the things that we must do as if I can say so, as activists for people with disability, is that we must not be quiet, because our job is to actually change the perception of how people believe us to be. We are a natural part of human beings. That's the end of the story.
That's true. It's the perception of disability has been, it's become such a defined, it's gone in such a definite direction over the years, you know, to that people have started to, or people have just come to accept the fact that the person with disability is the problem. And I guess that's where one can compare the medical model to the social model of disabilities. And it can be quite interesting when one compares the two. So they can work together, but they also sometimes clash, quite often actually. So I think that could be quite an interesting topic to bring up in context between the medical model and the social model. I think let's expand this on to Tayla and Madri. What are your views on the social model compared to the medical model, Madri?
Yeah, thanks, Brandon. Yes, I want to ask Tayla a question. As someone who's recently graduated, and I understand will be graduating again, and from next year starts another journey where you will also be graduating again. But yeah, I wanted to, this is something that's also very close to my heart, because I'm a rehab professional and I trained, we are taught in a specific way to think about disability. And when we talk about perceptions, I think that there's the medical model and the social model of disability has got some power to influence perception about disability. So just very briefly for people who might not be familiar with it, the medical model of disability sees disability as a medical problem that resides in the individual. It's a defect or a failure of the bodily system, and as such it is inherently abnormal and pathological. The goals of intervention are cure of the physical condition to the greatest extent possible, and rehabilitation. And the person with disability is expected to avail themselves of the variety of services offered to them, and to spend time in the role of a patient or a learner being helped by a trained professional. Now, the social model of disability sees disability as a situation that is caused by social conditions, which requires, to eliminate that disability, it requires that no one aspect, such as income, mobility, or institutions is treated in isolation. Also, that the disabled person should, with the advice and help of others, assume control over their own lives, and that professionals and experts and others who seek to help must be committed to promoting such control by the person with a disability themselves. So looking at that difference between the two, I wanted to ask Tayla, in that context, if you can reflect on your learning experience up until now, as you became a young professional, and how it prepared you to be a rehab professional to persons with disabilities, if that's okay, Tayla.
Of course. So I have been very privileged to study at what I think is the best university in the country, and that is the University of Cape Town. Yeah, like you said, Madri, I did my undergraduate there, I've done my honors degree there, I'm finishing up my master's, and I'm set to start my doctorate there. So I feel very privileged to have been there for the last, what's going on, like 7 years. So it's a long time. But as an academic, a healthcare professional, and the partner of someone with a disability, I think I've got quite an interesting take on this one, because I see it from multiple different perspectives. With the medical model, I think as healthcare professionals, we are taught to focus on the specific condition, on the injury, or on the disability itself. And I do think that there is merit to this to a certain point, because as healthcare professionals, our job is ultimately to treat the condition that presents itself to us. But I think that the problem arises with the medical model when the healthcare professional becomes fixated on the condition or on the problem that presents itself. With every patient that presents to us, disability or no disability, you have to consider the person as a whole. And I think that's something that isn't really taught. It's something that you learn with time and with experience, and it's something that I'm still learning. I've actually got the perfect story for this. I have a wonderful, wonderful patient who I've been working with for well over a year now. She has a multitude of injuries, including she has a spinal cord injury, damage to the brachial plexus in her neck, so she lost function of her right arm, so she's a right arm amputee as well. She's developed syringomyelia, which is a cyst on the spinal cord, and as a result she's lost feeling in her left arm and leg, in her right arm and leg, and she also has very, very severe scoliosis. When I say severe, it's severe until the point at which her rib cage and her hip and her pelvis are actually in contact and basically rubbing against one another. And we have been working a lot on her spine and focusing on decompressing and derotating her spine, and that's been my focus for the last few months. And just the other day, like 2 weeks ago, she said to me she's really noticed that she's losing a lot of muscle mass in her left arm. And I suddenly realized that even though I'd technically been doing my job of treating the scoliosis, I'd completely lost sight of her as a whole person. And holistically, I wasn't treating the person in front of me. I was treating the condition. I was treating the scoliosis. I wasn't treating her. So that was just such a wake-up call to me. So I do think that there is merit in the medical model, just in terms of what it teaches, because you do have to consider the disability, that person's limitations, their secondary complications, and all of the medical stuff that goes along with it. But I think that the medical model fails because it actually doesn't allow you to treat the person in a holistic way, or the person as a whole. And so it's definitely something that I've learned when I actually started practicing as a biokineticist. And I think at the end of the day, the goal is just it's not to fix the individual with a disability, it is to empower them so that they can live their fullest lives, improve their quality of life, so that they feel that they can go out and conquer the world. And that's our goal at the Therapy and Beyond Center. You know, we don't treat the disability or the injury or the condition or whatever it is that you come to us for. We want to take you as a person and empower you so that ultimately you can function better in the world. I don't know if that answers the question.
Could I make a comment quick?
Of course.
In addition. So I think also another thing with the social model, which makes it different from the standard medical model. I'm saying standard medical model because you're giving me some insights which I really wasn't thinking about. But I think what makes the social model more applicable or better is the fact that it doesn't place the onus on the person with a disability, meaning that and that it essentially, people with disabilities can, you can be a wheelchair user and you're not wheelchair bound. You're not bound to your wheelchair. Your wheelchair is an aid. It's actually helping you. What's not helping you is the fact that the buildings that you go to, whether they be restaurants or workplaces, etc., are not designed according to accessible design. They don't have ramps, and if they do have ramps, the disabled community wasn't consulted, and the
wrong
ramps
angle
are too steep. Exactly. Mm-hmm. And I mean, as someone with a visual impairment, it would be like when people send images, like, okay, say I have a friend who received his end of year function invitation in like a JPEG file or something, which is not readable with a screen reader. And the thing is, I think what a lot of people don't get is that making things accessible is actually beneficial to everyone. But I just wanted to add that about the social model, how the social model actually places the responsibility on society as opposed to on the individual with a disability to be inclusive.
Absolutely. I've actually got an interesting example of that as well. In my apartment block that I used to stay in, they had no wheelchair parking, and Brandon would come and stay with me. And I lived on the second floor, and there is a lift, but there's no parking for him. So, you know, the point of a wheelchair bay is not because it's close to the lift and it's easy for lazy people to just get out of their car and walk straight into the lobby. It's there because you need the wider bay to open the door, take the wheelchair out, and transfer safely so that you don't knock into a car next to you. I mean, and that, to me, the fact that I had to go and advocate for wheelchair bays to be allocated, that is just the perfect example to me that it was just no account for the social model there. Like, it's so important to have accessibility like that, whether it's a ramp or a lift or whatever it is, and they just completely neglected it. And I mean, maybe they didn't have any disabled individuals staying in the building until Brandon came to join me, but that's not an excuse to me. I don't know.
I think it's important that they were responsive, if they were. I'm assuming, I don't know, it's assume, but yeah, I think the status quo that you're referring to, that accessibility is accessibility is not the status quo.
Exactly.
But it won't become unless you do speak up and people do inquire or request or I know that later on we're going to be talking about allyship, and I don't want to jump the gun, but I think it's a point that's going to come up there again. So I don't want to hog there. I know there's someone else. Yeah.
I think that's really well said, though, that it should be the status quo. It should be normal to have wheelchair bays and ramps and braille on your lift buttons. It shouldn't be something that we have to fight for.
It's almost, in a way, it should almost be a human right in a sense, if you think about it, because everyone else has the free ability to come and go as they please, but then those with disabilities, they are hampered by the limitations that society puts in place. So I think let's chat about from a legal perspective and with regards to human rights. I think, Thato, you have a legal background, so I'd like to ask you if you could comment on the disability legislation in South Africa, and from a human rights perspective, what do you think is missing?
If I can say so, I want to go backwards a little bit because the legislation as well as the policies have been, if I could say, accommodating and even allowing disabilities within the law and policies itself through the Constitution. So now we need to go back to December 1996. Okay. So there's a few amount of acts that actually allow the disability itself. I'll just name a few, such as the Employment Equity Act, the PEPUTA, which is the Promotion of Equality and Prevention of Unfair Discrimination Act. But we also go on to the international side. And that's the part that I actually love the most. So South Africa has ratified the United Nations Convention for the rights for people with disabilities. It was ratified in 2007, yeah. And we also have the white paper on the rights with people with disabilities that was approved in the cabinet in 2015, if I'm correct. Now, I'm saying all of this because there's a process going on here from 1996. So yes, a lot is missing. A lot in terms of time is missing. But what the state is trying to do is that they're trying to align three, give me just a moment, please. I'm going to use the word three. See, now we're getting in touch with aphasia. This word is just not coming out of my mouth. The state is trying to use three instruments. Thank you, found it. Three instruments through the UN CRPD, as well as the white paper, as well as the 2030 agenda, in order to make sure that people with disabilities are aligned into the law and into South Africa itself by 2030. So I suppose that is what's missing. Along the way, there's going to be some acts that are going to come through as well. For example, we're in the process of domestication, which is basically allowing the international convention which South Africa has ratified to become natural law within South Africa itself. So we're in the process of doing that at the moment. What I think is so important is that for each disability organization to play part in it. South Africa, sorry, not South Africa, Stroke Survivors Foundation is doing it now. I'm sure that part of other disability organizations, even the collective organization, are doing it as well, to play part in the domestication, just to make sure that we are not lost within law itself. There's a wonderful hashtag, which I absolutely love. It's called Nothing About It Without Us. It basically ensuring, and this also goes part into human rights as well. It's saying that, listen, we are human beings. So if you want to say something about us, don't say it without us. We need to be part of the law that is supposed to accommodate us and allow for everybody to win. So this is what I can say about what's missing. I suppose the biggest thing that's missing is that if we just look at the time, it's going to be more than 40 years of the aim to make sure that people with disability are allowed to thrive and, you know, to be part of society itself.
Yeah, that's a lot to take in. Does anybody else have any comments on those? Because I don't know that much about the disability rights. Lilley?
I don't really have a comment. It's more just that I found that incredibly interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, and also I love that hashtag, Nothing About Us Without Us. I completely agree. And I think also what is often missing, and we have a great constitution, but the problem is the implementation often.
There's something in the constitution, it says reasonable, I can't remember the rest, it said reasonable, it basically means give us time. Yeah, reasonable accommodation. It's basically give us time. We don't know how long, but give us time to make sure that our rights are actually livable rights.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. You got to really include those disabilities to get the best answers. You know, you need to live it in order to give the best feedback. And different people give different experiences. So it's, I guess that's when it can get quite interesting. So I know we have quite a diverse panel here, and if I can just take the discussion in a slightly different direction and just ask, with myself having obtained my disability later on in life, having broken my neck at the age of 16, and Thato, you having your stroke later on in life, I'd like to just open up the floor to the different experiences of people who have acquired disabilities and those born with disabilities. So Life, you were born with a spinal bifida, and Lilley, you were born blind. So what are your guys' views personally, or how have you guys dealt with your disability, and your views on disabilities as comparing someone born with it and someone who obtains it later? Life, let's start with you.
For me, I feel because I was born with disability, I do not know anything better. I've never walked. Wheelchair has been my means of transportation. Even if I speak, I say I'm walking because that's how it is for me. Like I don't know anything better. So it's just about me learning what works for me, and how to get myself in certain places, because I do not know anything better. I've never walked in my life. I've been on crutches, didn't work out. Then I decided I'm gonna be on wheelchair full time. But I don't know anything better except when I can't do a certain thing, like I can't reach something, I can't get to somewhere. That's the only time I really think I'm having a problem. Otherwise, I'm fine. I'm okay until people start staring for no reason, like they're looking at you like you're not sure what's going on, and you're fine. You're perfect according to you, but not to everybody. So, but for me, I feel like if you don't know, I've never experienced anything else but what I am. For me, I just needed to adjust to society because I went to an all disabled school. So I noticed that getting into society now, you see able-bodied people, I was not used to the stares. Like they will stare at you when you get into a taxi, you will fall. It definitely will fall because everybody's looking at you and you're not sure what's going on. Is my body falling apart or something? But I for me, it's like it was about me trying to find out how can I get myself into society. Otherwise, because I do not know anything better, except that in my next life I want to wear high heels. That's it for me.
I love that.
Life, can I just say high heels are extremely overrated?
See, I don't know. For me, they have a thing. I still want them.
Yeah, you're missing out on blisters and sore toes. I don't think it's much to miss out on. And being a wheelchair user myself, I know that my shoes stay fresh pretty constant because they never touch the ground. So I could sell a secondhand shoe, brand spanking new. And being someone with I've obtained my disability later in life, and being a wheelchair user, in a way I could be seen at face value as similar to you, having a spinal cord injury, but obviously spinal bifida, both spinal cord conditions, but people don't often know that. And from my experience, it's been quite interesting that I'm quite an optimistic person. I'm quite positive in, we just had someone join us. I'll pick up on that note in 1 second, but we actually have a guest speaker coming to present to us. I'm just going to pass over to Lilley for a second and she'll introduce her to us. Lilley?
Okay, guys, we have just been joined by Dr. Arielle Silverman, who very kindly, she can only be here for 5 minutes, but I asked her to come and introduce her book to us, or just to tell us a little bit about it. Now, Dr. Silverman is a disabled activist and social scientist, and she's passionate about improving public perceptions of disability. She is a researcher at the American Foundation for the Blind, and she believes that the challenges that are faced by disabled, or most of them, are correctable, and also that people do want to include people with disabilities, but they don't understand how to do so, and often that inclusion is blocked by stereotypes and misperceptions. Dr. Silverman obtained a PhD in social psychology from the University of Colorado Boulder in 2014, and also a postdoctoral fellowship at the University of Washington School of Medicine in 2016. She has authored over a dozen peer-reviewed research articles on disability psychology. And she founded a company called Disability Wisdom Consulting in 2016 that offered a variety of disability-related services to non-disabled and disabled people alike. Lastly, and this is what I asked her to speak about today, she has, on the 15th of November, released a book called Just Human, The Quest for Disability, Disability Wisdom. Oh, sorry, my screen reader is messing up. Let's try that again. Just Human, The Quest for Disability, Wisdom, Respect, and Inclusion. Welcome, Dr. Silverman.
All right, thank you, Lily. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you so much for allowing me to come today. And I actually don't have my camera on because it's 8 in the morning here in Virginia and I'm still in my pajamas. So it's a lot of fun to come on in my pajamas and talk about my book, which is actually maybe leads into a little bit of the background of writing my book, which was during the COVID-19 pandemic. Of course, I had a lot of free time. And I really started to think about what I wanted my intellectual legacy to be, understanding that there's a lot of weird stuff going on and, you couldn't take anything for granted day to day. I don't think it was mentioned that I've been totally blind since birth. I have a condition called Leber's congenital amaurosis, and much of my book is about my experience growing up as a blind person. And there are a lot of memoirs written by, some memoirs written by blind people who've been blind since birth. That's not really a new theme. But I think part of my focus is on the process of identity development as a disabled person in a non-disabled world. And really my lifelong desire to be regarded as ordinary, not as amazing or inspiring, or and also not as pitiable or helpless. So my book really explores a lot of those themes as I progressed through childhood and adolescence, going from this kind of naive understanding of blindness as just my normal and thinking that everybody else experienced the world the same way I did, through starting to discover that other people experience the world differently, and then discovering that other people thought I was somehow less because I experienced the world differently. And it took me some time to figure out how to cope with that, how to deal with discrimination, prejudice, and stereotyping. And then as an adult, I decided to make my studies and my career about understanding where prejudice and stereotyping comes from so that we can figure out how to eliminate harmful stereotypes and harmful prejudices and promote inclusion. So in this book, each chapter represents a different period of my life or a different kind of memorable event or lesson that I learned throughout my life. But it's a little bit unique in that not only are you reading about me and my story, but I also include examples from the academic literature and from disability history and disability justice literature to illustrate the points that I learn and the points that I'm now trying to teach. And ultimately, the goal of the book, which becomes a lot more explicit toward the end, is to move us toward this, what I call stage 5 of inclusion, the disability justice stage, and to focus on what we can teach the younger generations. And I write about some of my work as a mentor for blind youth and some of the things that I learned not only about blindness, but about other disabilities and neurodiversity through the young people that I worked with. So I hope that this book is of interest not only to people who identify as blind or visually impaired or low vision, but also to people with other types of disabilities, parents, family members, educators, rehabilitation professionals, and people who want to try to figure out how to make their spaces more inclusive. In terms of purchasing the book, I can go ahead and, if my screen reader will let me, I will type into the chat, find the chat.
What I can do is to share a link. So I'm going to send out an email after this to everyone that was here. Well, if everyone who would like to receive the email could just put their email addresses in the chat box, then I can send out an email with the links to where the book can be purchased. There we go.
Yeah, that would be wonderful. So I just shared in the chat the link to the book page on my website. And so the book is available on Amazon. I honestly don't know how Amazon works in South Africa. I authorized it to be distributed worldwide, but I have heard from other people like in Australia that they've had trouble getting it on Amazon. So let me know if you're able to get it on Amazon or not. But there are also some alternate formats. So the book is also available for sale as a PDF or as an MP3 audio file. It's not a human voiced version, it's a synthetic voiced version. The human voice version should be coming out in a few months. But if you want it as just like a synthetic voiced audio, that is available. It's also available as a .brl file for brailing or reading on a braille device. So if you're interested in any of those formats, you can go to my website, and the address that I just typed in there is www.disabilitywisdom.com/just-human-book. Or if you don't remember all that, you can go to disabilitywisdom.com and click on the link for the book. And it'll tell you where to send payment to receive any of those digital alternate formats. But let me know if you're able to find it on Amazon, because I just don't know how it works for you guys. Any questions?
Lilley?
I feel like I have 50,000 questions, but I am at a bit of a loss for words. I'm just fangirling out a tiny bit here. Well, if there aren't, I don't know, are there any questions in the chat box?
No, there's no questions in the chat box. I think that was quite a thorough description of the book. I mean, it's made me very interested. I did love the name, Just Human. And I think it sums up some very, very valuable points that anyone and everyone could really learn from. Thank you so much for sharing that with us, Arielle.
Yes, thank you so much. Really appreciate it that you're dropping in early in the morning. Like I'm also usually in my pajamas at 8 o'clock in the morning.
All right, thank you. Have a good rest of your event.
Thank you. Thank you very much. You too. And yes, Dr. Silverman is going to have to leave us, unfortunately, because it is a normal work day. But we really appreciate your time.
Just got a comment now just saying thank you so much. So awesome, doctor. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Awesome. I know I'm definitely going to look at getting that book. It sounds very interesting. So I think she tapped on some very interesting points there, and how to pick up from where we were discussing earlier, it's different perspectives of disabilities. And let's rather say, if I can get my trail of thought again, my experience was very different to life's, in the sense that, yeah, we're both wheelchair users, yeah, we both have spinal cord conditions, if you can call it that, but yet mine was acquired later. So for me, I'm quite an optimistic person, and I've always kept pushing in life and kept trying to better myself, and I've always pushed forward. But I've also had immense moments of down, and some really, really hard lows where I compare my life to what my life was before. And I tend to take my identity, for a while, I took my identity as my disability, and I would feel like I've lost everyone who I was before, and I've lost myself, when in fact, I'm not now Brandon, the disabled kid. If I can put it roughly, I'm still me. I can shape me into whatever I want to be. And I'm not limited by my disability. And I feel like that's quite a big aspect, that when someone acquires their disability later, they often link it to their identity, and in a negative aspect, in a negative way. And that can often hamper them from moving forward in life, because I know I've had moments like that. If I could turn it back to Lilley, I know as someone, I mean, we're speaking from wheelchair users' perspectives, but Lilley, you are visually impaired. How's it been for you?
Similar, I think, to life's situation in that I always saw it as, you know, you can't miss what you never had. So to me, being blind has always just been such a normal part of my identity. And I mean, it didn't make up my whole identity, but it was just part of who I was. It was like normal to me, except so the majority of, I would say, unhappiness that I've experienced related to my blindness has not been about the blindness itself. It's been about how people would treat me differently, how little kids when I was growing up would constantly just be like, how many fingers is this? You know, like, you already know I'm blind. Please count your own fingers. And, you know, so it's mainly about how society has been exclusionary towards me, my unhappiness with regards to my blindness. But I mean, in general, I don't have unhappiness with regards to my blindness, never directly because of my blindness. And also, I mean, I'm now very, I incorporate my disability proudly into my identity, in the fact that I am disabled. I'm not differently abled. That word annoys me terribly. I am disabled. It's fine to be disabled. It's not such a terrible thing. So that is kind of how I have seen it all my life. But I mean, I've only recently started learning about people with acquired disabilities and what they might be going through. And yeah, I just feel that I'm very passionate about forming part of the disabled community. And I feel that there are different kinds of bodies and different kinds of people, and we are all diverse in so many different ways. And I feel that my disability is just another thing about me that is different to the next person's.
That's so true. That's how, now what's an interesting aspect that I'd like to hear is, Thato, from your experience, because for me, and for many of us, it's very physical. It's a limb, it's body function, where a lot of yours was in your brain due to the stroke. So how did you deal with that? Because I can't compare to that at all. How did you overcome and have to deal with that? I'm sure it takes immense levels of patience.
You know, I love the words that are often used in the conversation with Lilley and yourself, and life as well, about identity. And I must tell you, from the early recovery period, accepting a change of identity was an emotional, a psychological knock, because I had to be completely somebody else. And even I had to change even the language that I was using. For example, if I can challenge life, you spoke about something that is better. You spoke about almost like walking is better. It's just different. That's all. There's nothing better about walking. And I had to change this kind of language in myself, because all I was thinking about is what I used to be. And I had to change. Okay, I'll give you the perfect one. I don't like using disability. I don't like it at all. I use different. That's the word that I use. That's the word that I use, because all we are doing, we're just different. That is, there's nothing about the abilities that we have. There isn't. It's just different. That's all it is. That's my view on it. And I insist on using positivity, because I don't like, just to be completely honest, you know, I don't like assuming that the normal is better than people with disability. We are human beings. That's the end of the story. And it took me a while to accept it, because of the and the post in terms of my identity that I was going through. And it's cool now because now it's like 9 years later. So as opposed to having this conversation, you know, like 9 years ago. But it's cool to have this conversation with you to reflect and to completely turn around the identity of who you are. And that's why I'm actually challenging life, because I was like, you're awesome anyway. It makes no difference whatsoever. If you want to get high heels, get it, no problem. You don't need to walk with them. No, you don't. Do what you want to do with them. It's just this kind of way of thinking of getting out of the box. Because if I wasn't out of the box, I would still be insisting in going to the pre-stroke that I used to be in. And that's impossible. It actually is impossible.
I just think that this is such a cool question, you know, actually, because I think so many people often assume people with disabilities are, they're all the same, you know, and I think that this is such a cool question because now we're hearing all sorts of different views. And I think, you know, that is also something that needs to be acknowledged, is the diversity amongst us as people with disabilities, that we see things differently, we have different views, we have different I mean, the fact that some people have acquired disabilities, some people have disabilities from birth. I mean, I just think it's very cool that we can sort of show through this discussion that we are diverse people and we're not all just one blob that goes under the heading of disabled. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I love that. I really do. And it's so interesting to hear also different people's perspectives. Like, for example, you said there, Thato, that you like to use the word different. And I respect that. I don't particularly like it when people say I'm differently abled, but that's purely my views. I'd rather be referred to as a person with a disability, but I don't like the phrase to be called disabled. So it's so nice to hear a different person's that someone else stands up for the different phrase. And I think that could bring us on to our next topic of how people talk about those with disabilities. I see Susie is actually commenting here. Sorry, just a quick divert. She's saying here that to Lilley, what you said there, Lilley, is so appropriate. Wow, very thought-provoking indeed. I'm so glad that it's fine to be disabled. You're so positive. And another comment from her says, of course, plus we get a fast track to truly a reawakening about life. That's very true. You get a moment where you really realize you not to take things for granted. She says, yeah, which very few do. Plus we meet incredible people on our journey that we would not have met before our different abilities. I love that. I love that. That's really cool, Susie. I really love the way that you phrase that. Tapelo, they're saying learning a lot, guys. I'm really happy that you guys are learning from this chat. It's a really nice opportunity for us just to share our thoughts and our experiences. And that brings us on to how people talk about those with disabilities, you know. So I know Lilley wanted to start the discussion there. So how does the way that disability is talked about affect societal perception of disabilities?
Yeah, so basically I wanted to direct a question to you and to Tayla, as well as a couple. I mean, this is actually a very broad topic, but at Motto, we deal in perceptions because perceptions drive behavior, right? And there's so much, it's interesting that the crux of the matter is that the thinking around disability and that can be like the way that people talk about it, the way that it's portrayed in the media, positions us as, and this is actually sort of a perfect reflection of what Dr. Silverman was saying, is that we're positioned as not human. So we're either considered subhuman, just like not good enough, we can do nothing, disability is bad, you're less than, etc. And then the other side of that coin, and Brandon, I think that you can maybe tell us more about this from a parasport perspective, because I mean, you are like a celebrity, and that is how we are also, when people don't see us as subhuman, they see us as superhuman, and basically congratulate us for getting out of bed in the morning and remembering our name, to quote Stella Young. You know, the fact that we are often told, oh, we are so incredibly brave for overcoming this or that, or for in spite of our disability, and we are seen as these superhuman figures, but never just human. And I was wondering if you could just talk more about that. And then, sorry, it's a two-part question. What I would like to ask Tayla is, how have you experienced the way that people treat you two as a couple, or treat Brandon, being a partner of somebody with a disability?
So I guess I'll start with answering the first question. The whole discussion of being superhuman compared to, what was the phrase? Subhuman.
Yeah, subhuman and superhuman, but never just human.
Yes. So I love that discussion, because it's so true. We're not often seen as purely just human, and what we do is fine and kind of ordinary. Yeah, is a good word to use. Like me as an athlete, a lot of people either see me or they hear about my story of how I broke my neck in 2012, and they hear that I'm an athlete. And let's say, for example, it's a press release of some sort, and I might have an interview and see the write-up, and it's either taken in one of two different perspectives. It's either young kid's life changed by breaking neck, overcoming all odds. And it's this sad story of how this boy lost his life and had to overcome everything, and now it's my story is now turned into in a way into like inspiration porn. And it's now being an athlete and being a sportsman and representing his country, and it's a great comeback story. It really is, and I hope that it inspires people. I really do. But what I do as an athlete and what I do as a person shouldn't be seen as more impressive as what anyone else really does. Because I train as hard as any athlete next to me, as any other professional athlete next to me. And if I have a disability and I have a degree, I study as hard as anyone with a degree next to me. So it's either, it can go into the direction of, it's so sad, and now you have come back and you're the superhuman, or it can be seen in the perspective of, it's so sad and now he is less of a person and he can't do as much.
Brandon, could you just explain for those who don't know the term, what inspiration porn means and why it's not cool?
So inspiration porn is, it's a fine line. It's a fine line that it's a hard one to really put your finger on, but it's when you are, I always see it as milking a soppy story.
Yeah, I would say like when you're when it objectifies people with disabilities to inspire other people and make them feel like they're so lucky, or feel good stories.
So it's that's why I often say I like to motivate people. So I wouldn't want to, the moment you start to say you're not pushing hard enough, I broke my neck and I had to learn everything all over again, and what you're doing is nothing compared to what I did, so you're not pushing hard enough in that sense. Then it becomes in a way an inspiration porn, and it's a fine line. It really is to be inspiring, but then be really just milking it. I know Tayla and I were discussing it the other day, and I mean, Tayla, what's your perspectives on that? I know we were discussing inspiration porn the other day.
Okay, Brandon must just mute himself because we're actually sitting in the same room, and so if he's talking and I'm talking, it's just like there's such a bad echo. But I actually Googled it quickly just to get the proper definition, and it's the portrayal of people with disabilities as inspirational solely or in part on the basis of their disability. And like I see it so often that somebody will tell Brandon, like, we can just be out together in a lift somewhere, and someone will comment on just how amazing he is for basically being out of bed and just living his life like a normal human being. Like, that is nothing, there's nothing inspiring about that. That's completely normal. That is normal. That is not inspirational. So yes, maybe Brandon, to me, Brandon regaining his hand function as somebody who should have no hand function purely because of his hard work and his dedication to his rehabilitation, that's inspiring. Like, his dedication and commitment to recovery is inspiring. But the fact that he can drive himself and get himself to his rehabilitation center, or I don't know, cook himself dinner, that's not inspirational. That's just living his life. And I actually sent Brandon something very interesting on Instagram the other day, that there was a post done by a disability rights activist saying, with a photo of a couple, an interabled couple, we like to call it, with the partner, like myself, not having a disability, and then the person with a disability. And it says that the partner or the able-bodied person is not a hero, and the person with a disability is not a burden. And so often I have people telling me that I'm so brave and they could never do what I do. And it's just like a shame. Like, I love my parents, but they also, when we started dating, it was a concern for them that like I was going to be this person's caretaker. And it's purely just misunderstanding. And, you know, he's not at all a burden to me. I think our lives are completely normal. It just takes us longer to do stuff, and he can't climb stairs. That's what I always say when people ask me about our relationship and the differences. I always say the only difference is Brandon just can't go up the stairs. I've got to pull his wheelchair up. Other than that, he does absolutely everything that we do. So yeah, for me, it's I hate it when people tell me that I'm brave and I'm a hero for dating him, because what makes me so special? I mean, yeah,
but exactly. I mean, it's like I've had the same kind of experiences in that, well, in that people would come up to my boyfriends and tell them, oh, you're such a good man, and then, you know, I'd be like, damn, it's not like he's getting nothing out of this relationship.
Exactly, absolutely. But Susie has said that on the whole, she finds people in South Africa can be really kind. I do agree with Susie. Generally, people, they want to understand, and they don't really do it in a nasty way. But we have had some very interesting experiences.
Is it okay if I quickly just comment on also on what Susie said? I once worked with a disability activist who had a disability himself, and he was extremely negative and almost aggressive towards persons without disabilities when they show their ignorance and lack of knowledge, and make mistakes in addressing someone with a disability, for example, or asking a question about someone with a disability. And I explained to him why I feel differently about it, and how you increase your knowledge and you learn by making mistakes, and how and by asking questions. But I think the difficulty in our conversation was also that I was the person without the disability who's coming up for people without disabilities, and he was the person with a disability saying to me, there's no excuse not to know. So I think there's, I mean, people make mistakes, and they are silly things that make us want to roll our eyes, and most definitely makes you angry. but I think then move through that and answer the question, or move through that and address the issue, so that people can continue to learn, so that people can. One of the questions that infuriates me the most is when an employer asks me, but what can a person with a disability do? What work can a person with a disability do? And I try not to be sarcastic. I understand where, okay, I don't fully understand anymore.
I don't understand
where the question comes from, but the answer to that is, in fact, well, it's the same as asking the question, well, what work can a blonde person do? Or what work can a man do? It's exactly the same question. But I have to have those conversations with the employers without blowing my top and without being sarcastic, so as to educate and teach. Yeah. So
I think I absolutely agree.
Sorry, Lily.
I don't know. No, I just wanted to say I agree. I absolutely agree with Madri. And the thing is, I think there's a lot of silence around disability, and people don't ask questions because they're scared they're going to meet that grumpy disabled person who's going to jump down their throat. And the more we as people with disabilities are going to react in anger to a simple question, the more people are just not going to ask the questions, and then they're going to keep treating us the way they're treating us. So I think that no, I don't think it's our responsibility to educate the world, but I honestly think that, come on, man, just don't get offended by a simple question.
Absolutely, I agree. I think that, like, I know I love it when people ask me questions. So I love to teach and I love to talk as well. So just give me a gap and I'll go ahead. But ask questions. There's a difference also between prying for information. So the questions that are like, oh, what happened to you? You know, we get that all the time. But ask educated questions and we will happily answer, because it's so important to teach people about this kind of thing.
You know, I think this is my view, is that is that being a activist, you need to be conscious about that one. But at the same time, we're also human beings. And, you know, when we go through, and I must admit, every now and again, I lose my lid when I've had enough about the interaction with other people. And I will never apologize for it, because I'm also a human being. And even though there are, whether or not they were conscious or unconscious about the question that they were asking, I do believe in a subtle way, it's part of awareness. It's part of just the communication to at least start the conversation that we're having. And maybe we might go back into it later to make it into a conscious, decent conversation to assist on both sides. But I'm kind of using it in both ways. I do believe that we've got the right to ramp it up a little bit, because the truth is we're also tired. And at the same time, we have to be conscious people and do what needs to be done. And basically, we're just human beings. So just allow that level of being a human being, even if it allows, emotional ramp it up. And I suppose the point is that everybody has to be conscious about this one. So even though I get upset by, what another person has said to me, they also need to be conscious about what they were even asking me. It goes both ways. And this is the process and the journey that we're living in right now.
Yeah, I do get that, and I agree with that too. I mean, it is the other side of the coin, but I do agree with that too. I mean, it's not as I was saying, it's not our responsibility to educate people. And we do get tired of answering questions. And I think it's a lot of the time it's about what you're asking and how you're asking it. I mean, you can kind of, a normal adult should be aware of the fact that you don't ask somebody, how do you wipe your butt kind of thing when you go to the bathroom, you know what I mean?
But they will.
So I mean, I think that it's fair that like some questions are just perhaps, you know, are prying, and they're just not they're not, it's not the person is like nosy. They're not trying to learn so that they can be more inclusive and so that they understand people, you know. So I think that you make a very good point.
Lily, I've just been asked to read a comment actually by your mom. She says she'd like to add her penny's worth as the mother of a visually impaired young lady. People have often praised her for coping with a child with a disability and said that they would never have been able to cope. What nonsense. I've learned so much more from my daughter than if I had not been her mother. I think that's absolutely
thanks,
incredible.
So
Stunning.
Lily has brought another ally. I wonder, yeah, I know we started talking about this question, but the concept of allies and allyship, I wonder if we can expand on that a little bit, about how to become an ally or a better ally, and how to ally ourselves.
Okay, I think I would like just to start with that. For me, the biggest thing is ask questions. You know, if you see somebody struggling, whether they are trying to enter your building or get up a ramp or there's only stairs, go to them and ask them, like, what is it? How can I help you? How can I make this process easier for you? What can I do to improve upon your experience here? And you know, Brandon had a wonderful experience at a BMW recently where the front entrance only had stairs and he couldn't get in, and the manager or the dealer principal came out to him and thought Brandon was going to yell and complain and say, how dare you do this? This is like not acceptable. And, you know, we used it as an opportunity to actually educate them. But yeah, I think the most important things in terms of becoming an ally for someone with disability is to ask questions. What can we do to help? How can we make this better? How can we make this process easier for you? I don't know if anyone has anything they want to add from a disability perspective, because I'm talking purely as an able-bodied person.
I do have something. Oh, go ahead, Brandon.
Yes.
Oh, I think all of us have something to say here. Let's start with Lily.
Okay, so I mean, I want to agree with Tayla. Asking somebody if you're not sure how to accommodate me, ask. That is one thing. I think learning, like if you really want to be an ally, like read up on it. Also, there's a lot of information about disability out there, and reading about it is a good idea, or ask a disabled person to give you some resources, or I mean, but I think essentially what would come down to the crux of what I was saying earlier too is just that, you know, just treat me like a human. I'm not a zoo animal. I'm also not someone who's, well, I mean, yeah, just treat me like a human. Treat me like you treat whoever that you meet in the street who's not disabled. And I mean, I think another way in which people can be allies is there's often, I totally agree, nothing about us without us. However, I don't think that there's anything wrong with non-disabled people actually starting to care about disability and wanting to maybe to also be an advocate for disability rights. Just do it in consultation with people with disabilities.
Thato?
I would definitely say, especially for people with invisible disabilities, is the level of patience, because you will see that the process of healing and recovering, especially those with acquired disabilities, the pace of time actually goes down, it slows down a little bit in order to allow the person to heal. And this is where a lot of the misunderstanding and a lot of the lack of relationships part ways, because people are not allowing the patients to come into the relationship. When I say relationship, I'm talking all relationships, whether it's not employment, family relationship, friend relationship. I do believe that patience is one of the most important things, just to allow somebody to heal. And when I say heal, by the way, healing is until you die. You're going to heal until. And I don't mean that just physically. I mean in yourself, just to heal. So I'm going to say that's my first one. Patience, it's so important.
I think what Lilley said about the fact that we're still human at the end of the day, and we need to be seen as equal to everyone around us, because we still feel the same, we still bleed the same, we're still human. I know as an athlete, I was approached by someone and I mentioned how I'm competing internationally for the South African team. And they said, oh, okay, wow. Well, I guess it's a lot easier for you guys. There's less of you there and the competition is a lot easier because people with disabilities don't push as hard and can't push as hard as people without disabilities, as able people. And I had to really control myself in that moment, because the beauty about para sports is that you can have 3 different people with 3 different classes, and they can be performing, let's say they're throwers, and they can be throwing 3 totally different distances, but they're working all equally as hard, and they're working equally as hard as the able person, as the able world record holder who's able. It's so frustrating when they see your disability and they immediately think you're incapable, and they think you're limited. So people must just empathize and realize that we're still human. We're the same as everyone else, and we do push as hard, and we are capable as everyone else. The biggest disability is a bad attitude. That's what I feel. But before we round off, I'd like to just get some. Oh, we have a comment there. I'm really slow with my reading. Tayla, can you comment, please? Sorry, dyslexia.
Okay, this is from France. He says his experience of learning how to be an ally to persons with disabilities has really shown him that it's all about consent. Asking to help when it's not wanted is just as offensive as not offering. We would not immediately assume any adult needs a hand or intervention with daily life, and I'm learning not to make an assumption in the case of person with disabilities. If we create a safe, welcoming space in our environments and minds, consenting adults will feel free to ask if and when they need help. And I think that's so true. That's amazing.
Yeah, I absolutely agree.
I love that. That's great. That actually sums it up perfectly. There's another comment here from Ricky. I practice allyship by creating space and providing platforms for people with disabilities to speak for themselves, and that's so true. That's powerful. People with disabilities need to be given a stronger voice to speak for themselves, for others to hear. And we're going on to the hour now, and we're probably going to round up soon. But before we round up, are there any more comments maybe from Life or Madri just before we close?
There's so much that I want to say, but I'm not going to. I love the conversation. I would have loved to carry on forever and ever. And I think we should definitely create more opportunities like this, more conversations like this. It would be wonderful.
I think adding to Thato, patience, as much as they have to ask, Before grab, don't grab, don't grab, don't grab. People like to grab. I don't know why they grab us.
Yes.
I mean,
Oh
these
goodness.
work. These are the only things that work. So please don't grab them. If you grab them, I'm dead. So, so yeah, ask. And I feel like while in the question of asking, I feel like don't make us ask all the time. People need to make it possible for us to do things ourselves, because we can do anything that we're supposed to do, but just make it accessible for us so that we don't have to ask you. We don't have to, don't make us ask you. So just make it accessible so that we can live like other people. We don't have to. So don't make us ask. Make it accessible. Then we're okay. We're good. Yeah, I think that's it.
Just last comment from my side, because life now made me think of this. Firstly, yeah, I think from to be an organization, an organizational ally, I think organizations need to just educate themselves on accessible design. They need to educate themselves on what are accessible forms of reading material. You know, they need to educate themselves on things like that. So that is the one thing I would say from in a greater, or from an organization or a workplace, to be an ally would be to research that. And as Life was saying, so that we don't constantly have to go to our workplace and ask for everything. And then the other thing that I wanted to say was that you were mentioning about people grabbing the wheelchair. So with service animals, it's also interesting that people, I mean, don't call my guide dog from across the street when I'm busy trying to get somewhere. I mean, seriously, the dog is not there for you to play with. If you come and ask me, can I pet your dog? I'll most probably say yes, but don't just, I mean, people will ignore the human behind the dog all the time. They'll just fall down in front of the dog, and I'm just like, hey man, it's not like I was in a hurry to go anywhere. Just play and get it done. Sarcastically, obviously. But I mean, yes. So I think that is something that I've often experienced.
Yeah, I feel like so much value has come out of this conversation. So many good points, so much value from different perspectives. And I thank you, everyone. Thank you, Lilley, and thank you, Motto, for hosting this panel discussion. Thank you for everyone for joining and for giving your input. Lilley, do you have any last words just on closing?
Yeah, I just also want to thank everyone who attended for attending, and please don't forget to pop your email addresses in the chat box or whatever, or with any questions that you might have. Also, thank you very much to Nicole for assisting us behind the scenes with everything, making sure everything goes smoothly with regards to the Zoom room. And I hope that everybody has an amazing weekend.
If we got a comment here just before we close saying that let's do this more often. So if you're up to it, I think it could be quite nice to actually break this broad discussion down into smaller topics and have regular discussions throughout the year even. So
yes, that would be amazing.
If you guys are up to it, I think it'll be really nice for us to do. So you guys can contact us through Motto Consultations, business consultants, sorry, and Walking with Brandon as well. And on those platforms, if you want to get in touch with any of us, you can just send us a message and request by name, and then we can get you in touch with those individuals. So I'd prefer not to give contact information here on this platform. So yeah, just message us on Facebook or on Instagram, and then we'll get you in touch with anybody you'd like. So thank you so much, everyone, for joining. And I hope you have a lovely day, and happy World Disability Awareness Day. Take care. Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, guys.